But
Right.
what would happen is I would get into that job, I would be highly successful, give them the results they hired me to produce,
Right.
and then put myself out of a job because I did it. Okay, you wanted this result, I gave this to you.
Mm-hmm.
Now what?
Mm-hmm.
So I found myself doing what millennials now do, moving through jobs, looking for satisfaction, looking for happiness, looking for that intrinsic, I made it, I did it.
So, welcome to the Meaningful Jobs podcast season 2. I'm your host, Adrian, and today we're extremely honored to welcome Teresa Wornstaff, who has her own executive coaching and career coaching consultancy for a really long time already. So, how are you doing, Teresa?
Adrian, I'm so excited to have our conversation today. I think that we're going to bring to the audience some really extraordinary nuggets to help
Yeah,
them grow.
totally agreed. Because just for our listeners, context, I guess, before the interview, I and Teresa talked a little bit about the purpose of life, how we're both really aligned in our search for a higher purpose in life aside from just working for a paycheck. So we'll be talking extensively about this in this episode.
Yes.
So before going in depth about the current business you're in, can you tell us your career path, maybe? Like, give us an overview before you started your business.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So I was raised by an entrepreneur.
Right,
My dad built his own business,
right,
took it all over the world, started in Southeast Asia, and then it moved everywhere. And so that was the foundation that I was raised in, somebody who was dedicated to creating something, and very hierarchical, very command control.
right.
Um, the he was the boss and he ran the show. And
Sorry,
so I felt
can you ask what kind of business that is?
you can't, it was construction, but it was high-rise specialty in construction. So like in Hong Kong, it was the Tai Yao Bank building. In
Yeah.
Seattle, we've got 2 Union Square, Southern
Mhm.
California. So all of these really specialty high-rise buildings.
Right.
And so I felt growing up that if I was going to be successful,
Hmm.
if I was going to accomplish anything,
Hmm.
I should be a high-powered executive running a company.
Hmm.
So all of the decisions I made to orient myself in my career were based on business.
Right.
And so I worked in manufacturing, I've worked in software, in tech, I've worked a number of years in healthcare, always rising the ladder. But
Right.
what would happen is I would get into that job, I'd be highly successful, give them the results they hired me to produce,
Right.
and then put myself out of a job because I did it. Okay, you wanted this result, I gave this to you.
Mm-hmm.
Now what?
Mm-hmm.
So I found myself doing what millennials now do, moving through jobs, looking for satisfaction, looking for happiness, looking for that intrinsic, I made it, I did it, this is a good place to be,
Mm-hmm.
and never finding it. Never, the project was fun in the beginning,
Yeah.
but then it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
So my search has been for long lasting happiness and fulfillment and success. What is it that will help me cultivate that? And even in the consulting that I did over the last couple of decades,
Yeah.
I would hear that from my clients. How do I find fulfillment? How do I find inner satisfaction? And so I coined this phrase, moving from living by default,
Mm-hmm.
which is by societal constructs, and starting to define your own. So operations, sales, finance, a
Mm-hmm.
little bit of everything, but
Mm. So you kind of dabbled in everything. You were successful in all of them, but
yeah,
I guess the problem for you is what's what's the thing after you've got all that success, which is it could be astounding to quite a lot of people listening, or to people not listening as well. But it's funny that a lot of humans, they try their lives to reach the top, but once they reach the top, they become depressed. So
yeah.
yeah, can you tell us a little bit more about how you actually felt when you reached the top in every role you did, before you started your business?
That is such an insightful question. Thank you for asking.
No problem.
I was sad.
Mm,
I was depressed. I was so much of my personal happiness came from my achievements, from what I did and who I helped and the projects I landed and the contracts that and the mergers and so, you get to this place, you did accomplish the achievements, but it was hollow
mm.
because it didn't fulfill me. It didn't
Well,
give me that
can you specifically point towards why you felt like this, or it doesn't have to be so specific if you can't think of why, but I always find it really interesting that we as humans value a lot of achievements, but once we have them, all of a sudden we don't seem to value them.
yeah, I think for two reasons.
Mm,
One, um, I was living by somebody else's standards
mm,
and fulfilling somebody else's dreams.
mm-hmm,
And two, I defined my self-worth
mm,
by the job.
mm-hmm.
As long as the job was vital and successful and involved, then I felt like I had worth. But the
Right.
moment it completed and there's not another one right behind it, or there wasn't another accomplishment to chase, then I became disoriented. So many of us define our self-worth by what we do, not who we are.
Mm,
And so there was this constant ebb and flow. And then I searched for that next great project, that next great job. And I think it's important to mention as well that underpinning all of this is the fact that I was born intuitive.
mm,
So my lens on the world not only is what the human experience is, but it's also that intuitive sense of where am I supposed to be? What are the other nuances available in this experience?
mm,
And how can I use this intuitive tool, this intuitive sense,
mm-hmm.
to orient back to that place where I can find the fulfillment, where I can be happy, where I can be in a place of deeper self-worth.
Mm. I think you mentioned a lot of good points there. A lot of people um, measure themselves based on other people's standards without them even knowing. And
Yeah.
this is a question I didn't prepare, but I just thought of this question, which I think will be quite interesting. Um, how do you feel about, you know, successful entrepreneurs that we always see on our screens, like Elon Musk, like um, like Jeff Bezos? how do you think they
Mhm.
keep on going? You know, because you said um you could keep yourself going, but once you reach that goal, you seem to, you know, become depressed. But, you know, for other people, it seems like they've got something in them that they could keep going.
Mhm.
Could you point out maybe the difference in this, you think?
Yeah, I think it's a spectrum, right? So
Hmm.
for Elon Musk and Bezos, what defines happiness and fulfillment for them?
Hmm.
Um, and I think they're evolving that. Number
Hmm.
two, they're living their life through the lens of their brilliance.
Hmm.
So they are working within their genius. So for them, that's always worthy. They're not allowing other people to define what their brilliance is and what their happiness is and what the job should be and what the project should be. They're defining it. It's going in the other direction, right? So
Hmm.
they're defining all those measures, which means they have the opportunity to self direct.
Hmm.
They have the opportunity to go within and say, okay, what's going to give me happiness today? Where am I going to feel fulfilled?
Hmm.
And Steve Jobs is another one. He always was self-directed. He always said, where do I push myself next? Where do I put my brilliance? What project? What
Hmm.
asset? And all three of them live that. Whereas most of us go in the other direction. They allow society to tell us,
Hmm.
go here, do that, get this degree, take this job, climb the ladder, be
Hmm.
in this industry, whether it's family, friends, or general society, the things that, are programmed from advertising and media,
Hmm.
right? So I think that is being self-determined. That's the difference between then and now for me. Now I choose. I choose what I want to work on.
Hmm.
I build the constructs that I want to work within. I choose who I want to work with.
Hmm.
I'll say, I'm sorry, I'm not the right person for you. I'm not the right mentor.
Hmm.
There's a value disconnect
Hmm.
or a vision or a mission disconnect.
What do you say though to the millions of employees who perhaps, you know, couldn't have their own business and are just working paycheck to paycheck? Like, how can they find a way out of this, you think, then?
That is a brilliant question. So I'm going to give you, and I've been thinking about that a lot, Adrian, since you and I connected. So I'm
Mm,
going to give you a couple of answers because I certainly was that person in my early careers as a single mom.
mm,
And this is a big reach, but I'm going to put it out there anyways. I believe that financial well-being is the result of doing what you love and doing it well.
mm,
So when you find your area of brilliance
mm,
and when you work within it, the natural result is financial abundance. And I think that both on a microcosm and a macrocosm. So for the individual and for the company, stay in your
mm,
lane and do it better than anybody else and
mm,
come from happiness and joy and fulfillment. Now, in the microcosm, the other ingredients are know thyself, understand what you love to do,
mm,
understand what your brilliance is.
mm,
And it is one of the most challenging things to learn about ourselves because our brilliance is something we do so well, it's effortless.
mm,
It is the thing our friends ask us to do for them. Our brilliance is the thing that everybody admires from us, but we don't see. So one of the key ingredients to finding your brilliance is to talk to others.
mm,
Why are you my friend? what do you admire within me?
Mm-hmm.
And then being open and vulnerable and receiving that,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And saying, yeah, actually I do that really well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so understanding what your brilliance is and then aligning it to your job. When I managed people, one of the first things I did was understand what they love to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I literally would spend 6 months of my first part of managing a team,
Right.
understanding what their unique contribution is that made them happy.
Mm.
And then I'd look at the scope of work, whether it was the department or several departments or a project. And I'd say, okay, we're going to reorganize based on where I think you will be happiest.
Mm.
And you can watch the results increase, whether that was monetary, time, effort, product design, whatever it was, whatever the scope of work for that group of people was,
Mm-hmm.
it would exponentially increase the more the people were happy doing what they were there to do.
Mm. Well, it's interesting you said that you put a lot of emphasis in asking what your subordinates are interested in doing. But have you encountered anybody who just isn't passionate about, working in a company that you happen to be in the same time? And what would you do in response?
Yeah, I have, unfortunately. So the first response is to try and find a place. If it's not in my team,
Yeah.
in whose team, in what department, doing what service. Um, and then if you can't create something for them that benefits them and the company, then they need to find somewhere else to work.
Mm.
And that's the sad
Have you had
reality.
to fire people?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I have.
I kind of guessed
And
that.
yeah. And I've never fired somebody without having a conversation, and the actual letting go was the result of many conversations.
Right.
Um, yeah, yeah, it's
Mm.
not the most fun part of being a manager,
Mm-hmm.
but it is the one where I feel strongly that I still serve that person by
Mm.
letting them go. Because by letting them go and having the conversation about why I'm letting them go,
Mm-hmm.
it gives them another lens to look at their life and maybe do a reorientation towards where they might be happier.
Mm. Right, right.
I, yeah.
As it's something that I've been thinking a lot, which is there's Camp A, which says you should follow your passion no matter what, and Camp B, which says you can have your passion, but don't rely on it to make money. Um, I guess both of them have their own merits and um, you know, ways that aren't things that aren't well thought. I think it's hard to just pick one camp or the other. But personally, I don't think you can just say follow your passion and you'd be fine. You'd be fine in life, because you see countless musicians, artists who can't make it to the top, and they could become depressed as a result. So how would you view this issue, you think?
Well, I think first and foremost, we humans have this great propensity to polarize things. It's black or white, yes or no.
Mm,
And I agree with you, Adrian. It's in the middle.
mm,
So if you're a musician, and let me back up a minute. I actually have an artist friend
right.
who's highly successful,
Mm,
and she's done it all on her own by learning. So there's a couple of things there. What do you define as success? If you want to 100% follow your passion, then define what success will mean to you. Does it mean working part-time for a paycheck while following your passion? So is it an and situation so that you're paying the bills while doing what you love until what you love starts to pay your bills? I mean, it's a progression. It's not something that you can just wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to go travel the world and I'm going to blog and I'm going to be successful doing that. Well, you have to have some skills in those areas to perform well, right?
Right.
It's like winning the lottery. The odds are really low
Yeah.
that you'll be successful with that experience.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess, you know, a fine balance is needed. But I personally have friends who I know work their socks off. They reach a lot of what I would say worldly success, you know, where they get a lot of reputation, fame. But, you know, again, similar to your situation, perhaps they achieve this and they become depressed because they don't know what's, you know, afterwards. So can you tell us a little bit about, you know, how you know, as somebody who set up your own business, how do you coach your clients to not fall into this trap?
Yeah. Know thyself. I'll go back to that. Really understand what is your brilliance, what you feel is success, who are you, what makes you happy, how do you take care of yourself so you don't drop into burnout. It's an internal journey first before it's expressed externally. So really understanding what is within you that wants to be expressed to create success externally. Does that make sense?
Well, if you can explain a little bit more about that, maybe.
Yeah. So when when I work with individuals, the first thing we do is define what makes them happy. And we do that by looking at 3 measures. What do they value?
Yeah.
If they could change the world like that, what would the vision be for the world? Because often it's their world that they're talking about.
Right.
Right. And if you could be Superman, what would you do? What would your purpose be? What would you fix? So when you have the context of those 3 measures, they allow you to start looking at the world a little bit differently, looking at how you can interact with the world a little bit differently. And then when you overlay things like, okay, now what is your brilliance? Where do people see you successful? And overlay that. So it's an evolution. It's not take the green pill and you'll have the experience. It's this evolution of internal knowing,
right,
of internal expression,
right,
that you want to bring out into the world. Does that help a little more?
Yeah. I think it really helps. And could you tell us a little bit more about how you transitioned into having your own business? Because you mentioned at the beginning of the episodes that you were born into an entrepreneurial family. You always thought that in order to be successful, you needed to be in control and have your own business. But obviously, you didn't straight up become a business owner at first. So, could you tell us how you transitioned, you know, into having your own business?
It was slow, and it was the back and forth that we talked about earlier. I would work for somebody else, and then I'd move off and do my own thing. And then I'd go back and work for somebody, or I'd take a contract, or I'd take a project, and then I'd come back into my own business. And through that evolution, I overcame fears. I overcame the fears that were holding me back from stepping into full entrepreneurship, stepping into my own business. stepping into my own evolution. And these fears come from all sorts of places. They're belief systems that live within us. They're responses to trauma. They're responses to benign incidences that happen in our childhood, where we make a decision about how the world should be. And for me, it was a lot of it was wrapped up in being safe and secure.
Right.
Yeah. And entrepreneurship, owning your own business, is scary, and there's a lot that is required of you, because you are doing all of the jobs. You're doing the marketing, you're doing the accounting, you're doing the sales, you do it all.
Right.
So it's also embracing everything that is required of having your own business.
So, just lastly, before we end the interview, for those who are perhaps struggling in their careers, aside from advising them to know themselves more, do you have any advice for them, you think?
It's an inside job. Start with yourself, understand, go to my website. I've got some free resources available. And find a mentor. Find somebody who will help you, guide you in the way that you need. Don't do it alone.
Well, that's some great advice, and thanks so much for the interview. So for our listeners, do check out Teresa's website, which we will put on the description link to this episode interview, and do subscribe and rate the Meaningful Jobs podcast. We would really appreciate that. So thanks again, Teresa, for coming to my podcast, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you, Adrian. Good to be here.
Thank you.